Jennifer and I must have been drinking the same Kool-Aid because I have a couple of very similar slides to start off with. So I'm going to quiz you first. All right, so what's a watershed? Can anyone give that definition? Since you were obviously listening to Jennifer, right? Which one am I supposed to press? This top one? Oh, okay, that makes sense. I don't give a lot of presentations, so. All right, well, let me help you out. Now you'll really, yeah, you're right. There is no snow. So now this is really going to drill it into your brain. So a watershed is a land area where the surface water drains to a common stream, creek, to a larger channel, larger river, eventually to a lake, reservoir, or other body of water, eventually to the ocean. If you'll notice, oh, there we go. You notice that there's boundaries to the watershed as well. Why are healthy watersheds important? How do we use watersheds? Drinking water, yep. Drinking water is super important to all of us along the Front Range, anywhere, and we're really lucky that we have a great source of water in Colorado. A lot of other areas are not that lucky. We use water for businesses. We use a lot of water for agricultural reasons. We use water for recreation. That's also super important to a lot of us in Colorado. We use it for wildlife habitat, for just general aesthetics. So yeah, it's really important to all of us living here, and we all live in a watershed. So in Larimer County, you can see the outline in yellow there. We have two major watersheds that Jennifer alluded to in her presentation, the Cache Laputer and the Big Thompson. This presentation that I'm giving today is actually in tandem with Hallie's presentation. We do a lot of very similar work. We are sister watersheds. We deal with a lot of the same challenges. And so this presentation is more just like kind of setting Hallie up for describing the projects that we do. I'm gonna kind of go over the different challenges and the processes that we deal with. One important thing to notice in this map, if you notice in the watersheds, there's the green areas on the left or west side of the watershed. Does anyone have any ideas on what that is or what that indicates? The green areas in the watershed? Those are the forested areas. So that is very important to us. About 80% of all of our water supply in Colorado comes from our forested system. So when Jennifer was talking about the federal, the government that set aside all of our different federal lands, this is part of the reason. They wanted to protect our water supplies. Let's see. So our forest systems provide ecological services that help to maintain water quality and quantity. But our forests are actually susceptible to a lot of different issues. So a lot of our Front Range municipalities, different partners, they really work to focus on source water protection of those forested systems. What can disrupt a watershed? As you might imagine, pollution is one of the things that we really think about that can disrupt water quality, but it's not pollution in the sense of trash. We're talking about sediment is a main disruptor of water quality. We're talking about nutrients and metals, chemicals that enter our water systems. Land use management, things like roads, developments, grazing and agriculture, businesses, they all do have some type of impact on our water systems. And then finally, with climate change, as we're seeing our temperatures generally climbing, we have warming temperatures. Sometimes we're seeing more precipitation in areas. Sometimes we're seeing less precipitation in areas. We're seeing a lot more wildfires, flooding, and drought. And that's really what I'm going to be focusing on today. Oops. So here you see the Cache-la-Poudre watershed here, and then the Big Thompson down here. And this map shows wildfires over the past 10 years. And if you'll notice, one, wildfires have been getting larger and larger over the last 10 plus years. And two, they don't care where the watershed boundaries are. They're going to jump different jurisdictional boundaries. So the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed and Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, as well as many other partners, including the county, including our local municipalities, have been working very hard to address a lot of the issues that we're seeing from these fires. So of course, you see the outline of the Cameron Peak fire as well. We were unlucky enough to have the largest wildfire in Colorado's history. It burned nearly 209,000 acres. So, when we see fires burning and the immediate aftermath, we see all the pictures of homes burned and trees burned. But it's really, what we are really focusing on are the negative impacts for years, if not decades after a fire. So what's happening here? Before a fire happens, we have a healthy forest, and the trees have needles on them, they have leaves on them, and that forest canopy actually intercepts rainfall and precipitation, and it slows the velocity of that rainfall as it hits the ground, or before it hits the ground. The other thing in a healthy forest that is important is the soil. So it's got a lot of organic material, a lot of the duff layers, so the leaves and the needles all act like a sponge, so when the precipitation does hit the ground, it soaks it all up and it allows the groundwater to recharge. However, after fire, when we don't have those needles and leaves, the rainfall is actually hitting the soil, or what's left of the soil, at a high velocity, so it's disturbing what's left on the ground, and the soil is actually becomes hydrophobic after it burns so severely. So it's actually repelling water. It's no longer absorbing the water, and all of that rainfall does not, well, I shouldn't say all of it, very little of it gets absorbed by the groundwater, and it ends up just collecting on the surface and growing in volume, flowing down hills, growing in velocity, and what we end up seeing is scenes like this. So you can't hear it, but it's very loud. And so this is a stream system that is not used to this much water. So high volumes of water are reaching our stream systems that are near infrastructure. And the other thing you might have noticed is it's black water. And I don't want to drink black water. Our municipalities don't want to treat black water. So this is a huge issue. Fish don't want to swim in black water. So we're seeing long-term impacts following the fire. Again, not just homes burned, not just trees burned, but we're seeing erosion, too many buttons. Erosion issues, flash flooding, the high volumes of water are picking up trees and branches, sometimes picking up entire trees, picking up boulders, running into homes, destroying those homes, running into roadways, taking out culverts, dropping sediment in areas that we do not want it, killing fish. So that I know with the Poudre River, they've had a whole entire population of fish die off because of all the black sludge that ended up in the river system. So Hallie tonight is going to present a lot of the ways that we are addressing those issues. The other thing I wanted to mention that both of our coalitions are working on is wildfire risk and mitigation. So fires and these catastrophic fires and the negative impact that they present to us is something we want to avoid. And luckily there are ways that we can build our watershed's resiliency to fires on our landscape. This is a map from the Colorado Forest Atlas, and it shows Larimer County's risk, wildfire risk, to in relation to our important assets in the watershed. So those assets would be homes and infrastructure. This is another way to look at the issue. So this shows an aerial image of the same exact location in the Big Thompson Watershed, comparing 1940s forest structure to 2017 forest structure. Aside from the fact that it's black and white compared to colored picture, does anyone notice something in particular that is different? There's more trees in the 2017 forest structure. So our forest systems along the Front Range, or not just on the Front Range, all over Colorado and in the West, they evolved with fire. They evolved with disturbances, and they're used to being more open. We have more openings in forest structure. We have less trees. We have more diversity in tree size and tree ages. But because of wildfire suppression over the past century, the forest densities have increased dramatically, and that presents a very huge fuel load in our forests. So luckily, there are ways that we can treat forests to prevent, or actually to restore forests back to how they used to be before European settlement, using things like forest thinning, even prescribed burning. So our goal in working together is to implement forest restoration so that we can have a healthy and more resilient watershed. These are some of the programs that align for both of our organizations. We both have forest restoration programs where we do treat and try to restore forests back to a more healthy state. Obviously, like I said, Hallie's going to talk about wildfire recovery. We focus on river restoration. And all of these projects, we incorporate some level of science and monitoring because we want to make sure the actions that we're implementing on the ground are achieving the goals that we set out to do. We really want to make sure, if we're going to be managing and manipulating the landscape, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And then incorporated in all of those are outreach and education, because it is important to have an educated community. So like I was saying, we have a shared vision. We're both members of the Northern Colorado Watershed Coalition, and we all work with other partners, work to create healthy and resilient Northern Colorado watersheds that can support wildfires, low-intensity wildfires, without causing those long-term damages to watershed services and communities. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Don't go too quickly. I see a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. The two pictures of after a fire and so forth. When the new growth occurs, are there different trees that settle in there? Like if you lost a lodgepole area, what replaces it, and does that matter to your work in the watershed?
If a lodgepole was there before, it is probably going to come back afterwards. Those actually come back like carpets, which is good. So that is a system that evolved with fire. Ponderosa pine is also a forest system that evolved with fire. One of the things that our organizations are focused on are the ponderosa pines. So where we are seeing the fire burn so severely that the seed source has been totally wiped out, we actually are working on reforestation projects to plant ponderosa pine in areas so we can make sure that, because we want systems on the landscape that can support these low intensity wildfire events. And Hallie will talk a lot about that.
Good question, Bill. Brittany got a question.
I'm using this slide as an example. Before the big fires, we had a lot of beetle kill. So it's kind of an intermediary to that, but does it affect it the same way?
Yes, yeah. So like I was pointing out in this image, just like wildfire, our forest systems evolved with disturbance events like beetle kill. You know, so it's all part of the cycle, right? And so, you know, the other thing that we're dealing with now that we might not have been, or we weren't dealing with previous to European settlement was climate change. So that is another aspect of this that is different. You know, we're seeing widespread beetle kill across all of our western forests. So that is just building the fuel load that is creating these catastrophic fires as well. Did that answer your, I don't feel like I